me turn my talk. Here we go. How he said he living life as a gringo. Where you question where you fit in every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course. Man, episode 102 of 105 technically. So I think we're exactly 2 weeks left in the show. Sort of. It's like a week and a half if you're counting business days. Whatever. We have 3 more shows left after this episode of Life as a Gringo, and that's it. That's it for Life as a Gringo officially. And then, of course, like I've been teasing, we're going to have some bonus episodes that are airing throughout May, I think into June as well. So there'll be stuff to hold you over. There's other things coming. I can say that. I could say stay subscribed to this feed. If you're not, subscribe to this podcast feed. There's another evolution, I think, of me and where I am at this point in my life and the things I want to talk about and how I feel like I can contribute to the culture and the progression. And I think just authentically who I am right now, and I've grown so much with this podcast. And again, I'll save the sappy reminiscing for probably the last episode in a couple weeks. But yeah, I'm excited for the next chapter. I'm excited that there is another chapter that I'll be able to kind of talk about or transition into sooner rather than later. For anybody that has, I get it. If you're a fan of the podcast, it might be a part of your routine in some sort of way. And I'm so grateful for that. And I don't want to leave you hanging, right? If you've enjoyed this time that we've had together, I know I have. I will say, though, as we're about to get into Thursday trends, I'm not going to miss regularly talking about politics. Quick inside baseball. As I was kind of figuring out what the next move was going to be after the end of Life as a Gringo, I was getting different opportunities and I was pitching different ideas. And one of the ones that sort of had garnered interest was me having a political podcast, and that sort of being the main focus of the show. And, I kind of had to have a real conversation with myself and sort of say, like, I'm just kind of drained by it all. And I don't know what that means, I think I'll always be active in it and using my voice, using my platform as best as I can. But as far as, week in, week out, having to talk about it and report about it and relive it, particularly under this administration, it's taxing, it's exhausting. It's not something I personally think is best for me and my mental, as well as, it's just not something I want to be doing on a regular basis. It's a lot. Not to say that I don't think it's important work, but for me personally, I kind of need a break from that, a bit. And I think I can contribute in being a voice and speaking up for the community in other ways and in ways that maybe feel a bit more natural and on the cusp rather than having to sit down and talk about all this stuff. As important as it is, I think you have to be informed, but it is draining to be. The more informed you are, unfortunately, the more draining it is. Like, the more aware you are of all the wild shit that's currently happening in this world, in this country, it really is fucking draining, and you kind of have to pick and choose your battles, so to speak. So, yeah, just kind of bearing it all out there for you. With that said, Thursday trends, what are we talking about this week? Let's talk about this interview with Donald Trump where he was asked about Abreu Garcia, who is the man from Maryland who was wrongfully deported to an El Salvadorian prison. They're now trying to spin the story that he was a violent gang member as a part of MS-13, and Trump just embarrassed himself in this interview. We'll talk about that. More stuff out of the Trump administration. Breaking news that one of Trump's main cabinet members is now out after a scandal. And we'll talk a bit about the economy. Women are trying to find ways to save money. I think we all are. We'll just have a general discussion about that. And then on the positive side of things, Bad Bunny's going to the Ivy Leagues. I will get into what I mean by that. Yale University, get ready for Bad Bunny. And I don't just mean a performance. I mean a course. We'll talk about that. But first and foremost, let's dive into the nonsense, the BS, in a segment we call For the People in the Back.
Say it louder for the people in the back. Say it louder for the people in the back.
All right, so it's just I like, and this is the other part, again, why like the political stuff is so exhausting, because we're just fucking talking in circles, right? It feels like I'm just constantly repeating myself, and quite frankly, that's what a lot of mainstream news is. You tune in, it's the same shit over and over again, and that's what's exhausting about it, right? Because it's like, how many more stupid Donald Trump stories or crazy Donald Trump stories or racist Donald Trump stories can you talk about before it's just fucking Groundhog Day, right? And, you have this interview with Donald Trump. I believe it was ABC News that was doing the interview. And they're talking about Abrego Garcia, again, the man who was wrongfully deported to El Salvador, even though he had a stay order, which meant that he was legally in the country. And now, in real time, you're seeing the just disgusting smearing of this man's name with no evidence and tying him to the MS-13 gang and essentially trying to clear themselves of both their ineptitude, but also the fact that they're defying the court system, who has ordered for them to process this man and coordinate his return back to the U.S. Rather than doing what's right and really admitting their mistake, they're just trying to spin this any way they can and turn him into a violent gang member who is affiliated and a member of MS-13. And in this sort of idiotic and almost comical, it'd be comical if it wasn't for the fact that we are talking about a human being who is literally, his life has been uprooted illegally and people are making a game out of it. And he's been torn away from his family and sent to what has been globally recognized as one of the worst prisons in the world, it seems like. So you had Trump on this interview, and he claims this guy has MS-13 tattooed clear as day on his knuckles. And the picture that he's referring to is a picture of this man's knuckles. And this man does have tattoos on his knuckles, but there's no MS-13. It's symbols. And a picture that Trump holds up has MS-13 in like regular Arial font over each knuckle. Now, the assumption of the picture is they're saying that those symbols are short for, or those symbols represent each letter and each number. But this dumbass, Donald Trump, seems to have literally thought that the MS-13 in Arial font that has very clearly been put on the picture via a computer and not done even in a way that is cleanly that would make you think this is a real tattoo. He somehow thinks that the Microsoft Paint letters of MS-13 above the symbols were the actual tattoo on this man's knuckles. And he's arguing in this interview with the interviewer, who says, no, Mr. President, that's a Photoshop. They're saying that the symbols represent MS-13. That's the argument. And he's saying, no, it's not an argument. They're not saying that they represent it. It's clear as day. MS-13 on his knuckles. This dumbass literally thought that the Arial font that was placed on the photo as a sort of translation, this dumbass literally thought that it was a tattoo on the person's knuckles. And it's like, I think the more frustrating thing is, at moments he seems like the dumbest person on earth. At other times, it's like he's the most conniving, evil genius. And I think that is what's partially frustrating, is like not knowing which is which. And I'm leaning towards him just being a complete dumbass who, because of his brazenness, at times falls into situations that make him seem sharper than he actually is. But again, the crude part about this is you guys are creating this fake narrative. And when I say you guys, I mean the Trumpers, the right, the Fox Newses of the world. You're creating this narrative, smearing this man's reputation and literally ruining his life and his family's life just so you don't have to admit that you were wrong. And while doing so, spitting on democracy by defying the courts that are supposed to keep everybody in check, even the president of the United States. And again, I feel like a broken record repeating myself. Quickly onto this other breaking news story that happened. Mike Waltz, Trump's national security advisor, is now out. He is no longer working for Trump, apparently fired or quit, no longer working there, after the scandal where he was in a group text message via the app Signal and by mistake included a journalist in a conversation with people, including the vice president of the United States, that had war plans in real time. They were discussing real-time war plans on an attack on Iran. So, I mean, I guess that's some positivity, right? This dumbass is no longer holding that position, which he was obviously unqualified for. They're talking about unqualified people with DEI. Look at the fucking cabinet of the president. You see, I'm going to go down this rabbit hole of just getting frustrated, right? Idiots. Just fucking morons. Complete and utter morons. And then talking about, I guess, where we're going, right, as a result of these idiots. You have this trend on TikTok now. They're calling it recession hair, which also involves things like press-on nails. And they're talking about how women are spending less and how the recession has already started. And they're saying this trend is not just about ditching salon visits. It's an economic strategy, according to USA Today. They're saying women are coloring hair at home or letting their roots grow out to save money. Google searches for blonde to brunette hair rose 17% in early 2025, a sign that high-maintenance looks are being swapped for affordability. Jordan Bayard, a stylist in Georgia, told USA Today that her clients are candid about cost. I cannot afford this many weeks. I can afford this 3 times a year. She adapts by offering low-maintenance options like, I don't know what the fuck any of this is, like balayage and color merits. I don't know what that is. Ladies, I'm sure you know what that is. Or color melts. I also can't read, apparently. Allergies are killing me. To extend time between visits. Black women, as Kimberly Erin Kitola shared, are navigating this shift too, often taking on chemical relaxers and braiding at home to avoid salon costs of $100 to $120 per session. Obviously, I can't relate to the at-home salon part. I will say, though, I'm no longer fucking recklessly spending $60 on a haircut. Well, I think my haircut was like $60 plus tip or 50 plus tip, whatever it was. And I was driving out of the way to do it. Great barber. But I had to find another option. I was like, this is kind of crazy. And in the uncertain times that we live in, I probably should be a little bit smarter with the things that I can be. Especially if I'm going here twice a week, right? If I have events, I might be going there once a week. And even that, I've been like, I was a once a week guy for a long time as far as going to the barber and getting my hair cut. I'm a skin fade guy, so like that after 3 days feels like I could go back to the barber. But I think it's a lot of sort of what we are thinking and feeling and anticipating, right? I know clubs are not as busy as they once were, and there's a lot of argument to be made. I don't think it's just one thing. But I think a part of it is people are not going out as much, right? Where back in, just a couple of years ago, it was like every Friday, Saturday night was jam-packed. Now Friday feels a little lighter. Saturday's still packed, but it's almost like Friday. I've said this before, Friday has become like the new Thursday. And again, I think there's an argument to be made about entertainment and things like that, and people not just, wanting to jump and, just go out for the sake of going out. I think, weed being legal, particularly here in New Jersey, you probably have people who do that instead of drinking. I think Gen Z is not as heavy of a drinker as my generation was. There's a lot of different factors, but I do think cost has something to do with it. It's hard to justify buying a beer for $8, knowing I can get a 6-pack for 10, right? And I think it's I think it's in the back of a lot of people's minds, and maybe I'm speaking in my own bubble, so to speak, but I can't help but feel like these things are living in people's head a bit more, right? You're a bit more proactive or conscious of the money you're spending than maybe you were just a few years ago. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think the fear because of the economy and where we are, that is obviously a bad thing. It's one thing if you're trying to be better with money and finances. It's another if you're doing it because you live in fear of what's around the corner economically with this country. And I was listening to the daily sort of podcast I use for news, and they were talking about, job growth is down higher than it was, I think. The lowest it's been in like 19 months or something like that. Job loss is rising. You have companies like Amazon talking about how they're going to display the tariff costs on each item so people know sort of, I guess, who's to blame for why something costs more money now. And even, I mean, this has been an issue for a while, but like, I do think that the prices have gotten to the point that most of us are far more conscious of it than we ever have been. I've never been a guy who's like been conscious of supermarket prices, and that's a privileged statement to say. But 2025, I'm like, man, how much is that? That like I'm actually like, far more conscious of like, what do I really need? And how do I make, purchases that are going to last me more meals and things of that nature? Because I'm like, it's crazy to me to be spending over $200 every 2 weeks on groceries. That just sounds nuts to me. I can't wrap my brain around it. I'm one person and a large dog, right? Like, we should not be spending $200 a week in this household. But I am. And it's like I'm trying to figure that out, right? And again, it's on my mind because of the level of uncertainty that there is in the economy. And the sort of, I guess, the fear of the economy, and then also saying, hey, there's not a ton of money out there. Like, there is, but there isn't. So I can't live under the notion of like I'm just gonna go get another and bigger check constantly. I have to live under the notion of saying like maybe I'm in certain lanes or avenues or gigs that I have, I'm probably capping out. So I need to save where I can so that I don't stretch myself too thin or I don't have to think about it essentially, right? And again, these are like conversations with myself that I didn't have just a few years ago. And, we're not officially in a recession. There are people saying that we are getting dangerously close to one. But I just think it's we're all far more conscious of it than maybe we were before. And obviously that's not a great way to live, a great way to feel. And I don't know. I guess I want to bring this conversation to the forefront in case anybody else is sort of feeling the strain of that or the fear of that. You're not alone. It's a TikTok trend now. But yeah, I don't know. Even like I have people that I follow who are entrepreneurs. I know somebody who owns a vintage clothing store here in New Jersey, and I like his content. And he's very like great about giving you inside baseball and stuff like that. And he had a video where he had somebody basically come in to sell him clothes, right? And what he was telling the guy was like, bro, you're charging me 2020 prices. It's 2025. Like, I can't charge what I was charging a few years ago. He's like, yeah, people are still buying clothing. They still want to look fresh, but they're not spending the same amount of money anymore. They're trying to do it on a far more conscious budget. And I think that's sort of where we are right now. I think for a lot of people are probably hurting as well. Like I don't want to speak on, but I'm just saying, like, I think this is like the world that we're moving into because of the level of uncertainty of it all. The level of uncertainty that we are living in. And quite frankly, looking at things through more rose-colored glasses, maybe these are like better lessons, right? Like maybe if we become a little more self-sufficient, we can save a little bit more money. And maybe if we're more conscious of our purchases, we're now buying things or spending money on things that truly mean something to us rather than just fucking burning it away, essentially, right? And the haircut thing hurts me. I'm not going to lie to you guys. My new barber is good, but he's not as consistently incredible as my other barber. And I have to justify it because it's roughly half the price of what I was paying. I can get 2 haircuts for the price of what I was paying for the other one. So like I can't not justify that anymore, right? I can't be like, yeah, but it's really good. No, like this guy gives a haircut that's 75% of what the other guy was giving. You have to be okay with saying I'm literally getting 1 free haircut essentially. Like, let's put away that extra, 60 whatever bucks, and that's a fucking tank of gas essentially that lasts me a week or whatever it is. Yeah, I don't know if, it's just crazy. Like, stats are crazy right now. There's all kinds of wild shit. It's an incredibly uncertain time period. And I don't want to keep dragging this conversation out. But also, somebody posted something, and I have to fact check it, but like they were saying something like 60% of Gen Z people get laid off or get fired from the job they were hired at. Like, is that a sign of the economy, or that just Gen Z sucks? But like, I just think we're just in this really weird fucking time period, and then we have this imbecile who's at the fucking, driving the car and making it way worse than it actually needs to be. And that's sort of where we are. And then now all of us are like, how the fuck can I be proactive in like not losing my shirt essentially? Like I need to be a bit smarter. And again, in some ways, it's a good thing. In other ways, it's a fucking very scary and uncertain future we're heading towards. And, you know, we could speculate all we want and hear the talking pundits, but only time will tell. And I guess in the meantime, my approach, as it seems like it's being shared by a lot of other people, is like, hey, don't know what shit's going to look like moving forward. It might be getting kind of rough. Let me, like, be a bit smarter. Let me be a bit, you know, more intentional with how I'm spending my money, just in case, so that I don't, you know, get put into a position where I'm now getting the rug pulled out from under me, you know? And I think that's probably where a lot of people are. And again, it's living with a bit more intention, which I think is a good thing. And hopefully, you know, what we're preparing for never actually happens. Now, if I haven't depressed you, on to some positivity. We'll talk about Bad Bunny going to the Ivy Leagues. But first, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. All right, so, I mean, cool story here. And this is literally case in point why I talk about music and entertainment mattering, right? Because it can lead to something incredible. And also doing it with intention, not just creating entertainment for the sake of entertainment or music for the sake of music, but actually having a real intention behind it. And, you know, we all fall victim to, listen, everything doesn't have to be super serious and you know, fucking deep. Sometimes you just want to watch something mindless, right? Sometimes you just want to listen to some ratchet music in the club, whatever it is. But there is something special that happens when you actually intentionally go out to move people beyond just physical dancing or whatever, but actually having your legacy and your art mean something bigger than you. And that's what Bad Bunny has done, particularly with this last album. And again, sounding like a fucking broken record, but it just keeps on unfolding. And a beautiful moment for culture here. Yale University, Ivy League, one of the most prestigious schools, you know, known around the world, is announcing a Bad Bunny class. It's called Bad Bunny Musical Aesthetics and Politics. The course is being taught by Yale Associate Professor Albert Laguna, who specializes in American studies and ethnicity, race, and migration. According to the Yale Daily News, Laguna was inspired to build the class after listening to Bad Bunny's latest album, Debí Tirar Más Fotos, on repeat during a trip to New Orleans, saying, quote, I was taken by how every song opens up avenues of exploration in relation to topics that are important to me, Laguna told the outlet. I mean, same, bro. Same. And by the way, if I could toot my own horn here for a second, because I always look deep into things, and I was doing like a lot of when this album came out, I did a lot of content breaking down in depth maybe some of the songs or even just why this album is so fucking special. And I remember not everybody, most people were like, yeah, you know, we're into hearing the breakdowns and, like, you know, looking into things deeper. But I would get some comments from people like, it's not that deep, bro, looking too much into it. And it's like, dude, you don't get it. Because I don't know, I'm like, now, why am I getting mad about a comment from months ago? But anyway, what I'm trying to say is what a lot of people have to recognize when you talk about music historically, particularly in our community and black communities, music was a form of protest. For many people of color, it wasn't a luxury. And in fact, people of color have been having their music stolen by white people for as long as, you know, recorded music has been going on, longer than that. But music was a way of keeping spirits up, of not allowing your colonizer or, you know, the person holding you down, not allowing them to break your spirit. And we saw this with slaves and the music, right? And the music they brought to Puerto Rico, things like bomba. And all of this stuff has deep-rooted history in not only celebrating our culture, but also as a form of protest and resistance. And that's what makes this album so special, is Bad Bunny brought that energy into the modern era. And that is obviously what inspired this class here, and what this professor was so taken aback by, that he felt like he had to build a class around it. Now, they're talking about how Bad Bunny's newest album has shaped the Yale syllabus. They say, the class will use Debí Tirar Más Fotos, Bad Bunny's sixth studio album, as a primary text. The album features a 17-song long track list, including artists such as Rainao, La Pleneros de la Cresta, and Chewy, and topped the Billboard 200 chart in January. You could see this if you're watching the video version. I'm blinking a million miles an hour right now because I have contacts in, my allergies are fucking killing me. So I'm trying to read while also doing that. Professor Laguna highlighted the opening track Nueva York as especially pivotal. The song samples El Gran Combo de Puerto Rico, their song Un Verano en Nueva York, grounding the album in the historical relationship between Puerto Rico and New York. Thank you. I know I'm not the only one saying these things. But damn. I should be a fucking Yale. That's my takeaway. I should be a Yale professor. Maybe that's in the cards next time out. Because I did a whole video talking about this. About this song celebrating the relationship and being a bridge to the diaspora. To the gringos like you and I, right? To being a musical cosign and extension of the hand to say, you are one of us. And honoring the contributions that Latinos from the diaspora, in this case specifically, you're talking about New Yorkers, although I think it was a Cuban who wrote that song technically, but Latinos in the diaspora and the impact they had on Puerto Rican culture back on the island. And that song being a celebration of that and an invitation to explore that history. As the professor says, you cannot tell the story of Puerto Rico from the 19th century to the present without New York and the movement of people and cultural production back and forth between both places. Amen. What a great way as we, get out of life as a gringo here. Great sort of closing ideals here, closing stories that are so much of the story and the narrative I wanted to tell when I started this podcast. And by the way, I know we're talking about Bad Bunny, we're talking about Puerto Rico, we're talking about New York City, but it doesn't end there. Think about Chicano culture of the West Coast, which I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert on. But I think it's probably safe to say that even back in Mexico, there's some sort of influence on the West Coast Mexican-American culture. And there's a connection, obviously, between the motherland and the greater Los Angeles area and vice versa. And again, things like this, conversations like this one, for those of us asking, where do I fit in? Or I had somebody commenting on another post I had posted this week, basically saying that children of Latinos, those of us born in the States, not born in our homeland, we're not actually Latinos. Our parents are, but we're not actually Latinos. And obviously, this is an incredibly ignorant and dumb statement that I didn't even feel I didn't answer. I didn't go back on that, go back and forth with this person because it's just a dumb statement. But topics of conversation like this one prove how incredibly ignorant that statement is, particularly as we talk about the contributions that Latinos of the diaspora have made back to their homelands. And in this case specifically, the incredible influence New York has had on the island of Puerto Rico, and vice versa. Now, the Bad Bunny course at Yale will also take on capitalism or colonialism. Guys, bear with me, all right? I swear I could read good in normal circumstances. My eyes are just screwed right now. It's blurry. Yeah, the Bad Bunny course at Yale takes on colonialism and diaspora. The course doesn't shy away from the hard stuff. Laguna wants students to confront colonialism, gentrification, and the politics of travel culture embedded in Bad Bunny's work. He also plans to dig into genres that shape his music: bomba, plena, salsa, and reggaeton. Quote, you can hear what the mass migration of Puerto Ricans made possible. Reggaeton in Puerto Rico cannot be divorced from musical flows in the region. It's inseparable from colonial projects in the Americas and locally the politics of policing on the island. In other words, this is more than Bad Bunny's chart-topping hits. It's about what they carry. And this, I would love to. I wish they offered this shit online. I would love to take this class. I don't think at this point in my life I'm going to get accepted to Yale. So hopefully somebody could bootleg this, the syllabus or something online, and I could get in that way. But it's just, again, like, this is what I mean. This is why this is a career-defining album for him, because of the layers of depth here. And this is, you know, if he was a painter, this would be the shit displayed in a museum that would tell a narrative, right? He's really telling so much of the story of Puerto Rico in various different ways, and in 2025 giving us new protest anthems, and also giving us history and context and all these things. It's, while at the same time giving you music to while out with, you know, with your friends, which is okay as well. But this is, like, as you can tell, this is the type of shit that gets me fucking amped up. It's also a teaser. The new podcast is not just centered around music. It will have music aspects, but I might have said too much already, but who knows? I love y'all. You're a family. The new project that I'm working on that will, you know, follow Life as a Gringo after we close this chapter will allow me to have more in-depth sort of observations and investigations into topics like this one. And I know that I actually did do an episode on that with the Tiramos Photos. I think it's some of the takeaways personally, but I think I would love to have done, like, you know, this Yale class in the form of a 1 hour, you know, podcast of, like, deep diving into some of these things as well. So my next project is going to allow me to do some things like that as well. I think I've already said too much, but yeah, beautiful stuff to see. And by the way, again, this is Yale University. This is Yale University teaching a class on a kid from a small town in Puerto Rico. You have to think about how big that is. These are institutions where traditionally we were made to feel like we didn't belong. And now we not only have representation, we are also educating the next generation. We're also being honored in this way because that's what it is. And our story is being shared in an institution like this one, which has a long history of global exceptionalism. And that's a beautiful thing. And again, it shows that each and every one of us belong in any fucking room that we see fit. Because Bad Bunny has a class being taught at Yale University. Amazing. With that said, let's tie everything we talked about today in a neat little bow in a segment we call Conclusion Stew.
Time for conclusion stew.
All right, so to surmise all that we talked about today, basically just Donald Trump is a fucking idiot. I feel like that kind of summarizes everything. He made some bad cabinet hires. They were obviously idiots and not up to par with the job title. And shocker, in the first 100 days, basically, one of them is already out. And we've seen this consistently, even in his last tenure as president, where cabinet members were fucking dropping like flies. Not a shocker here. More sort of just disgusting weaponization of human beings and no concern for the fact that, again, these are human beings with real lives, but instead turning them into political pawns for your own game and as a means of covering up your own fuck-ups in the case of the man who was wrongfully detained by ICE and then deported. Just disgusting. And by the way, there was another story. I'm going to quickly just to tack it in there with like this whole ICE thing. You had immigration officials deporting 3 children this last weekend, all of which were U.S. citizens. One of them who was receiving treatment for stage 4 cancer. Now, Trump officials are attempting to rewrite the narrative and say that the parents were given the option of the kids staying here, and the parents are saying that's bullshit. And legal representatives are trying to raise concerns like, hey, we're not having a proper due process with these deportations. And Trump doesn't believe that we have time for due process, even though that is a part of this country. And again, people are wrongfully being deported or just being treated inhumanely. And it's just, again, it's just ineptitude, a lack of empathy, and unfortunately more of the same. We talked about people sort of like, recession, hair and press on nails and do, I'm not an economist. But I feel the pressure of everything, and I feel the weight of like how expensive it already is and how disastrous it seems like Trump's policies are and where we're heading. And yeah, I'm most definitely trying to be proactive and like, where can I save a couple bucks here and there, and put some money away so that if shit does hit the fan, I'm in a better position. And how can I be a bit more intentional with my money? And Bad Bunny having a class at Yale, like, again, we can brush it off as just like a thing, to get press or whatever it is. And you can sort of just say it's a class on, for a fun elective. But I see it as so much more than that. These, again, are circles that we were not even supposed to be a part of or even, attend these types of institutions, these schools. They weren't built for us. Yet now we have classes in these institutions being taught about us. That's huge. And again, that should be an inspiration for anybody. Like, you could be in any room that you want to see. Doesn't matter where you're from. Again, Bad Bunny is a guy from a small town in Puerto Rico. Small town on a small island in the Caribbean. And here he is having a Yale University class taught about him. It's fucking insane when you really slow down and think about that. It's beautiful. And thank y'all so much for tuning in. Man, we're getting close to the end here. I just want, ahead of time to say I appreciate y'all for sticking by me in this journey, and more stuff on the way. I promise. With that said, have an amazing weekend, and I'll talk to y'all on Tuesday. Until then, stay safe. Talk soon. Peace.